The information provided in the following program is not a substitute for or intended to be medical advice. Medical advice can only be provided to you by your personal physician.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Natural Health Consultant Show. We're here with you from Somerset, New Jersey on WCTC. I'm Dr. Harry Schick. I'm the director of High Point Health Center in Highland Park, New Jersey. And if you'd like to call in this morning and talk with me or talk with us on the air, the phone number is 732-545-9282, 545-9282. So as usual, you know, when I first started doing this show, I thought an hour, no way can I please have a half an hour, because I cannot, there's no way I'm going to fill up an hour's worth of time. And it turns out that I can never get through everything that I want to cover in just an hour. So I'm enjoying that there's so much stuff to talk about. So as usual, we have a menu for today. And today, in the first half of the show, we're going to kind of blend the first two segments, talking about autoimmune disorders and thyroid disorders and how they go together. In the second half, as always, we must talk about weight loss, because that's a goal for most people, to lose some weight and get healthier that way. And the other half will be on stress reduction. So before beginning, although I've already begun, but before talking about autoimmunity, I want to answer one question that comes up in the office quite a bit, which I got asked twice this week. Should I buy an alkalizer for my water so that I can drink alkaline water? And I touched on this a few weeks ago, but I want to make it a little clearer for people. So there's an idea that when you drink water, and many people have heard this. First of all, there's an idea that we should be alkaline, we should be acidic, and whatever that means. And the truth is, the answer is no. You shouldn't be either alkaline or acidic. Different parts of your body need to be more alkaline. Different parts need to be more acidic. And there's a certain range of acid-alkaline that you should be in. And I know when I'm using the words acid and alkaline, a lot of people aren't really even clear what that means. And it doesn't really matter. We're just talking about a balance in your body. So there's an idea, because there were studies done a long time ago that said people who drank alkaline water did better on a lot of health parameters. I think it was a study out of Japan. And the study is absolutely true. But it's an example. This is a study that's an example where you have to ask why to dig a little bit deeper. So these people were drinking alkaline water, and they did well. And we also found, I believe there's some studies that showed that people who drank more acidic water didn't do as well. So, of course, people want to go out, and the marketplace is happy to sell you a water alkalizer where you can put your tap water or your whatever water through this machine, and voila, it comes out more alkaline. And it does work. It does come out more alkaline. The problem is that is of absolutely no benefit to you whatsoever. It's a big benefit to the people who sell these things, but no benefit to you. And I want to explain to you briefly why. Number one, you may have heard the idea that your stomach has a lot of acid in it. And it's supposed to. You're supposed to have stomach acid. When you drink alkaline water, as soon as the water hits your stomach, it becomes acidified. So basically, you're spending money on alkaline water, which is alkaline from the time it hits your mouth till it hits your stomach, and then it's gone. It does not produce any alkaline results in your body whatsoever. It's a total waste of your money and effort looking for this. So good question. What about all these studies that show that alkaline water has all these good health benefits? So I want to explain to you why that is. The reason that alkaline water was alkaline was not because it magically was alkaline. It was because there are certain minerals in that water which made it alkaline. The alkalinity was a byproduct of the minerals. So the real study should have showed that people who drink water high in certain minerals have good health benefits. That would have been a great study, and that would have been very helpful for people. But instead, they focused on the fact that those minerals made the water alkaline and then told people to drink alkaline water. So the key is, do not spend money on alkaline water, number one. And number two, buy water which is naturally alkaline because of the good minerals that are in it. So I've talked to you in the past about how I like Mountain Valley water. Fiji water also is naturally high in alkalinity. We can talk more about that, but I wanted to get that clear because I don't want any of you spending any more money on buying an water alkalizer. The first time when patients say, hey, bought a water alkalizer, I ask them, I hope you didn't open it yet so you could return it. So that's number one. The second thing I want to talk about before getting started was, it's not easy being a doctor, and I have a lot of compassion for other doctors who try to work with patients, whether they're a natural health consultant or work in a natural field like myself, or medical doctors or emergency room doctors, whatever, because it's not an easy job. And I don't like ever saying anything bad about a decision somebody made, because in 40 years, I'm sure that there's a few things I could have done better, to say the least. However, something happened in my office this past week, which is driving me crazy enough that I have to mention it before starting the show. So I had a patient come in with their daughter, and it turns out they came in, and one of the things they told me was that she's now, I think, 12 or 13 years old, and she has celiac disease, plus all these other problems. So celiac disease is a problem where when you eat gluten, it attacks and destroys a part of your small intestine. So I said to her, well, I'm glad that you found a doctor who could actually find this and looked for this as a problem, because it's often overlooked. And then he told me the thing which I had to control myself and not let on to him how I felt. He told me, yeah, about 10 years ago she was tested for a gluten problem, but because her small intestine testing did not show any damage, they said it was okay for her to continue to eat gluten. So when somebody checks for celiac disease, what they do is they do a test where they look inside and see if the small intestine has damage. And in this case, this 5-year-old girl did not have any damage to her small intestine, although her blood work said, no, you shouldn't eat gluten. But because there was no damage to her small intestine yet, the doctor told her, okay, go ahead and eat gluten because it's not destroying your small intestine. So she comes back, 7, 8 years later, gets retested, still has a gluten problem, and now she has damage to her small intestine. Wouldn't it have been better when she got tested at 5 years old to tell her to stop eating gluten then, before she had this damage to her small intestine? Anyway, my takeaway on this is the following. You ever meet anybody who is a little bit pregnant? Of course not. And this is a kind of a joke when somebody says something, go, yeah, it's like being a little bit pregnant. No such thing. You are or you're not. Well, it's the same thing with a gluten problem, gluten intolerance. There is no such thing, and there will never be such thing unless something changes in science or anatomy or biochemistry. If you have been tested for a gluten problem and you have it, I don't care if you're feeling anything or not. Get off of gluten. We'll talk more about that in future weeks, but I needed to talk about that now. And I've almost already taken up the whole time of the first segment with those two things, but that's the way it goes with this. So we want to talk about autoimmune problems, and it's interesting because one of the things that is celiac disease and one of the things that gluten causes often is an autoimmune reaction. So before we go into our first break, let me just take a moment to lay the groundwork for what an autoimmune problem is. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of autoimmunity. A lot of you have been told you had it. Some of you have been told you don't have it. An autoimmune problem is the following, very basically. I'm going to give you a very general, easy way to understand it, which is totally accurate for you. Let's say you get a cold. Let's say you get a bacterial infection where you have a cold. When that happens, very basically, you have a couple parts of your immune system that go right to work on that cold. One part goes out like the sheriff going out to kill the bad guys with their guns, and they go and they want to shoot at the bacteria and kill the bacteria that are there to get rid of it. That's a good thing. There's another part of your immune system that goes out looking for the bacteria so it can tell the sheriffs where to go to. So the sheriff could be there down the street killing a few bad guys, but another part of your immune system will say, hey, look behind the store over there. There's bad guys there. And then the sheriff will go over there also. So there's two basic parts to your immune system. One is called the Th1, one is called the Th2. And they have to work together in tandem for you to have the best possible working immune system. What does this have to do with autoimmunity? Hang on. We'll be back in a little over a minute or so, and we'll tell you how that figures into your autoimmunity and what you can do about it. Dr. Harry Schick, Natural Health Consultants. I'll see you in just a few moments. Hang on.
Okay, fellas. Thanks for checking out our membership meeting for the Unstoppable Iota Gamma Kappa Fraternity. Candidates will be notified around mid-semester. Peace. Have a good day.
Yo, can you believe that white boy showed up?
Who, Justin?
Yeah.
I mean, he seems pretty cool. He's doing a lot of work in the community. He gets decent grades. Oh, yeah, I played ball with him the other day. Old boy got a mean crossover.
Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. White people think that just because they can rap or hoop or something, they could be one of us. Now, what would happen if one of us went across campus and tried to join one of their fraternities? Tell you what, it'll be a cold day and you know where before I let a white boy into this frat. You feel me?
Nah, Trey. I don't feel you.
The first step in fighting racial prejudice is taking a stand. Imagine the power of one voice. Find your voice at freedomcenter.org. A message from the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center and the Ad Council.
Live on Sunday night, it's Bill Cunningham.
Bill Cunningham here, the Great American. Every Sunday night live, a small band of renegades form around radio. From Maine to Hawaii, from Alaska to Florida, and all places in between, to talk about the issues of the day. This Sunday night live, we talk about what was and what lies ahead. Bill Cunningham, the Great American. I am a Great American, live with you every Sunday night.
Willie, Sunday night at 10 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC and WCTCAM.com.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you have the time of your life. I know I'm having the time of my life doing this show. I really enjoy doing it. Remember last week we talked about keeping things simple, and that's one of the things I really, really try to do. And remember, SIMPLE stands for Stop Imagining Massive Problems, Let's Enjoy. So let's stop imagining massive problems. Let's enjoy. Before I go into autoimmunity, a question in the studio was asked to me from someone who said that she had gone off gluten, and then when she goes on, when she occasionally dabbles in it, which she tries not to do, but when she occasionally dabbles in it, it seems like her reaction is worse than ever. So what I want to say to that is good. Good for two reasons. One, if you didn't have an immediate reaction, you might think it was safe to keep eating it, and you would start dabbling in it until all of a sudden being off gluten was an ancient story for you. So I like it when people eat something they're not supposed to and they suffer. Sorry, but that's the best thing in the world for you. The other thing is that I want to think about this story. I remember I used to use this example a long time ago when I used to live out in North Branch Station, riding down Route 22. There's a big chemical firm there, and they used to, some days it would smell terrible on Route 22, and some days wouldn't notice anything. So I thought about that if two people were riding down Route 22 at that time, and the windows in the car were open, and there was this terrible chemical smell, and one person started coughing and hacking, and the other person didn't have any reaction, who was sick? So people would normally think, oh, the person coughing and hacking is getting sick. And I would say, no way. The person who has no reaction to a chemical assault on their body, they're the sick ones. They don't even muster up this kind of a reaction. But if you go into a polluted area or a chemical area and your immune system says, whoa, let's stop this. I don't want any of these chemicals inside of me. And it starts creating mucus in your nose and in your lungs. And you start coughing and hacking. You're the healthy one. That's a symptom. That's a good symptom to have. So if you have a reaction to gluten and you eat, if you're not supposed to have gluten and you eat it and you react, congratulations. You have an immune system that's still with you and working. So I hope that clears that up. Okay, so I left off with a big cliffhanger. Anybody used to watch Dallas in the old days? I always remember that. I think it was the only serial show I used to watch, but there were always those cliffhangers with the gun pointer, the two people running. So the cliffhanger from before the segment was, what does all this bacterial thing have to do with autoimmunity? So I want to try to make this very clear to you now, and simple. So you have the Th1 sheriffs going around shooting the bad guys, and then you have the Th2 showing you where the bad guys are. Unfortunately, what happens in an autoimmune situation is that the Th2, along with showing the sheriffs where the bad guys are, occasionally will shine that light on a part of your body which is a part of you. For example, that Th2, those assistants to the sheriff will shine a flashlight on your thyroid gland. So now the sheriffs don't really know who's good and who's bad. All they know is that, hey, if the flashlight's on them, I got to go after them. So when the flashlight shines on your thyroid, again, the sheriffs don't think, this looks like the thyroid gland. No, they don't think that way. They think, oh, there's a flashlight there. Let me go shoot that. So it shoots at your thyroid. And that's sad. But the sadder thing is that from there on in, your thyroid gets categorized as a bad guy. So whenever you have a cold or a virus or anything happens that makes your immune system start to work, as a matter of routine, your sheriffs are going to fire at cells of your thyroid, and you will lose cells that you will never get back again. That's what an autoimmune situation is. When your body mistakenly, and I can't go, there's no time or even probably enough interest to go into the technical reasons why this defect happens. Suffice to know that when that happens, every time your immune system goes out to hunt, it's going to fire at your thyroid. That's called an autoimmune thyroid problem. There's a fancy name for it called Hashimoto's syndrome. So when somebody comes into me and says, how do I get over Hashimoto's syndrome? The answer is you can't. But we can control it, and there's some very good things to know about that. So let's just think about this whole autoimmune situation now. Okay, so if you get a cold and you have bacteria in your body and your body goes out to fire at the bad guys, it's going to fire at your thyroid. If you have a virus, in this case, it'll also fire at your thyroid. But let's face it, most people get sick maybe, hopefully, only 2 or 3 times a year. So if that's the only time your immune system was firing at your thyroid, it would really be no big deal. However, what if something happens where your immune system fires at your thyroid every single day? That's a big problem. Why would your immune system do that? Well, let's go back to the case of gluten. See, it all works together. Let's go back to the case of gluten. If you're not supposed to have gluten and your body has identified your thyroid as a bad guy from the earlier example, every time you eat gluten, it's going to not only fire at the gluten, it's going to fire at your thyroid. So every day you unassumingly or mistakenly or can't control yourself and you eat gluten even though you're not supposed to, every time you do that, you're going to have your immune system fire a little bit more at your thyroid. So what happens when you fire at your thyroid? Weight gain, decreased energy, sleeplessness, depression, anxiety, cold hands and feet, brittle, falling out hair, dry skin, and on and on. Sound like anybody you know? So those symptoms, and by the way, a good one is losing the outer third of the hair at your eyebrow. That's significant for thyroid. So, and I'm only using thyroid as an example. So let's step back again and talk about autoimmune problems. The only reason I mentioned thyroid, because remember, the flashlight was shown, or shined, well, it was on the thyroid gland. So, boom, they fired at, bow and arrow or gunslinger, fired at the thyroid. But what if the flashlight, in a certain case, fired at covering of your nerves called the myelin sheath? That's an autoimmune disease called multiple sclerosis. What if it fires at your pancreas? It can lead to an autoimmune diabetes. If it fires at your small intestine, we said would be celiac disease. If it fires at a part of your brain called the substantia nigra, Parkinson's disease. So listen, get the big idea. You've got a sheriff out to protect you. But depending on where the light was shown, it's also going to fire at you. So in one sense, all autoimmune diseases have a common basis in that is your body firing at itself. And what we can do about it is that we can find those things which trigger your immune system. Remember I said, listen, if you're only firing a couple times a year at your bacteria or virus or whatever, you can deal with that. But if you have a constant firing, that's when the problem comes in. So gluten is a great example, and in future shows we're going to talk more about gluten because I really want you to understand that, no, it is not a fad. It is a real thing. Well, I guess it could be a fad and a real thing. It's a real thing. Other foods can also fight. Listen, your thing may be potatoes, it may be corn, it may be milk or other dairy products. That's a common one. Eggs are a common one. Yeast is a common one. But if you don't have that problem, doesn't mean you don't have to go off those things, but you need to know. And by the way, at our office at High Point Health, this is what we examine with autoimmune problems. So feel free to give us a call. Our number is 732-249-9800. So if you have an autoimmune problem or wondering if you do or think that you might or want to know what to do about it, give us a call, set something up, and we can go over yours in person because we're become experts in figuring out the triggers for you. The triggers can be heavy metals. Some people have high mercury in their body. Some people have high aluminum or lead. And unless we deal with these things and get these things out, your immune system's constantly going to be firing at itself. Another example is parasites. Parasites can cause an immune system to fire. Constant yeast infections can cause an immune system to fire. So these are all things that we have to look at to know because the key to autoimmunity, I tell people you've got a gun loaded and firing at your thyroid. Unfortunately, we don't know how to take the bullets out of the gun. We don't know how to put the gun down. But what we do know how to do is to tell you, stop your immune system from saying fire. So, right? So we look for the triggers that stop your body from triggering against your immune system. So if you have an autoimmune problem, we need to reduce stresses of all kinds. And this also includes mental stress, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because cortisol, which is a hormone which is triggered under emotional or mental stress, also has a terrible effect on the immune system. So this is a complicated idea which I've hoped to make simple. So I want to make sure that we get it. So let's just take a step back, stop imagining massive problems. Let's enjoy it. Let's exhale, take a breath and get this, because I want you to be able to understand what autoimmune problems are. Because I have to tell you, in my office and the office of many people who do natural health care, because autoimmune is so rampant, I make an assumption when somebody comes into me with a problem that it's an autoimmune component until proven otherwise. It used to be in the old days, autoimmune was a rarity. Now when somebody comes in with digestive problems, respiratory problems, joint problems, a common autoimmune problem is called rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is an immune problem where the immune system is firing at your joints. My assumption is when somebody comes in with any kind of a chronic problem is that it's an autoimmune issue. And really, we shouldn't have chronic problems because the body is constantly making new cells over and over again. For example, if somebody comes in with an elbow problem and they say, my elbow's been hurting me for 10 years, I go, that's pretty strange. The elbow you have now is not the elbow that you had 10 years ago. So your body is constantly making new cells, but your immune system is constantly attacking and firing at it. So we need to see what the triggers are. The key is looking at that. Your immune system is wonderful and beautiful and doing what it's told to do. In an autoimmune condition, we're not going to blame your immune system, okay, because your immune system needs to do that. And the medical approach for autoimmunity is to, in general, turn the immune system down altogether, steroids and so forth. So what do steroids do? Steroids shut everything down and shut everything back, and it can be a short-term answer for relief, but it does not answer your problem. And I understand why people do it, but of course we want to get to the root of the problem, find out what the triggers are so that we don't have to worry about the severe pain and don't have to worry about medical intervention. So we are almost at the end of this segment. In just a moment, I want you to all think about this, and if you know anybody or if you yourself have been told you have an autoimmune problem, and by the way, fibromyalgia has many autoimmune components also. I'm just thinking of common things that we deal with all the time. But if there's an autoimmune problem, what's the answer? You should all know now. Raise your hands and tell me. Right. Let's find out what the triggers are so we can eliminate those from your diet. Really, would you rather have corn or have a healthy functioning thyroid? I'm hoping you'd say you'd rather have a healthy functioning thyroid. So let's find out what your triggers are, do what we need to do to get rid of them, and get you on the path to health. Dr. Harry Schick, Natural Health Consultants at WCTC. I'll see you in a few minutes when we get back to everybody's favorite topic, weight loss. See you in a moment.
Is it sunburn? Is it acne? Do you have irritated eyes? Any one of these signs could mean you have rosacea, often called the great imposter because it can look like so many other conditions. 16 million Americans have rosacea, yet most don't know it. Rosacea typically begins after age 30 as a facial redness that grows increasingly persistent, and tiny blood vessels may appear. Left untreated, bumps and pimples often develop, and in some cases the eyes are affected, appearing watery and bloodshot. If you've been noticing a change in your facial appearance, it may be rosacea, the great imposter. Learn the signs of rosacea: facial redness, visible blood vessels, bumps and pimples, or irritated eyes. If you have any sign of rosacea, see a dermatologist for diagnosis and appropriate treatment before it gets worse. For more information, visit the National Rosacea Society website, rosacea.org.
Hi, it's Bert Barron reminding you to join me weekday mornings from 6 to 9 for Jersey Central right here on WCTC. In addition to 6 traffic and weather updates every 10 minutes on the 5s every hour, we have the top newsmakers, great Jersey, national and international talk, great prizes, and more. Hey, if you're not listening, you're missing Jersey Hall of Fame radio.
Jersey Central with Bert Barron, weekday mornings from 6 to 9 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Segment 3. Segment 3, welcome Honey Sturzer, who works with me over at High Point Health Center in Highland Park, New Jersey. I got a lot of comments. People should say more often where we are. We're in Highland Park at 732-249-9800. You can look us up at highpointhealth.com. Okay, in this segment, hi, honey.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Always look forward to your input. We're going to be talking now a little bit about weight loss. And I want to remind everybody how simple weight loss is. Weight loss is a matter of having more fat-burning hormones and fat storage hormones. And we've talked in the past about a few easy ways to look at doing that, reminding you to always look at the first 3 ingredients of any food you eat. None of those first 3 ingredients should be sugar or sugar derivative, no glucose, sucrose. You know, coconut is very good for you, but coconut sugar is bad for you because if you take the sugar out of the food, it no longer is good. So I don't care where your sugar is coming from. It's going to create fat storage hormones. We also talked last time about exercise, and I got a number of questions in the office about that. So I want to just review that very quickly. And by the way, in our office, feel free to come by. We have the world's greatest weight loss exercise machine. It's called the 4-Minute Workout. And in 4 minutes, you can get your fat-burning hormone stimulated. Only 4 minutes, come in, do the exercise, and leave. That's it. I saw that a piece of equipment on an airplane once when I was flying across country. I remember I was going to a seminar in California, and I saw it in those booklets they have. I looked at it, and I saw this machine. I thought, wow, this is amazing if it works. So I researched it, found out it worked, wanted it for myself, and it was so good I got it for the office. So you should come check that out. It's in our physical. We have a whole physical therapy unit. It's in that. It's housed over there, and we have people coming in, working out and leaving, and they're getting their exercise. They come in 3 times a week. They exercise for a total of 12 minutes a week, and they're in great shape. So if you're busy and not a fan of trudging along, then that's the machine for you. So I'll be happy to tell you about that. So anyway, in exercise, the key is no jogging, no sluggish jogging around Highland Park or Somerset or New Brunswick. Doing fast, intermittent exercise where you go as fast as you can for short bursts, for short amount of time. Then rest, whether you're going to walk or sit or whatever, and then do another short burst. The short burst, as I told you then, was called grizzly bear workouts, because if you're not going fast enough to try to escape a grizzly bear, you're not going to get anything out of it. It means you have to go as fast as you can. The other question I had was to review on weightlifting for resistance exercises. So to review that formula, you find your absolute maximum amount of weight that you can lift. So let's say you can do a shoulder press of 100 pounds. You go to 70% of that, which would be, mathematicians, Debbie, 70 pounds. So 70%. So now I've got 70 pounds that I'm lifting. And how many sets do I do? 1. I do as many at 70% as I can until I'm exhausted. Doesn't mean, okay, I'm tired. No. If this is going to work, it's the last 2 or 3 that you do at 70% that are the ones that really have the effect. And I also want to remind you with exercise that there are 2 things involved with exercise: breaking down muscle cells and then rebuilding new muscle cells. If you don't get proper rest between exercise, you're not going to get what you want out of it. And anybody who's listening to this who's over 30, and I saw from the list of people who are on Facebook, I think 2 of you at least are over 30, that I want you to make sure you're taking a day off in between exercise. That's when your body rebuilds the muscle. Okay. Another great thing that I heard this week, and a patient came in terms of weight loss. She told me that she had heard what we said about doing emotional freedom technique, EFT, that Honey spoke about, and she looked it up, and she's been doing it, and it has helped tremendously cut her sugar cravings. Honey, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'm really glad to hear that our audience is following through with suggestions and trying them out at home. So EFT can help cut that urge, that craving in the moment. If you can stop and pause and actually implement the tapping when you're done with it, there'll be a reduction in that urge to want to eat something.
Great. So you're saying, so the person has the urge, maybe they're standing there, they've got the chocolate bar in their hand, and they somehow put that chocolate bar down, and they do the tapping, and then doing the tapping would stop that urge right in its tracks.
Absolutely will reduce that urge, and hopefully enough that you won't want to eat that chocolate bar.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people, they feel like, I've got a 60% urge not to eat it, but I need to get to 70% to really take effect. Like my body's still a little bit in control. So that tapping at that point can give you the extra maybe 10% or 15% boost to put you over the top, so that you can, it's like recruiting to help avoid that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to explain it. So whenever we want something, if we can give ourselves a pause and say, okay, I'll have it, but let me first do this.
Right.
And then you do the tapping, and then you go, I still want it. You can say, I'll have it after the second round. So it's really recommended that you do like 3 versions of tapping for any particular topic or thought or feeling that's troubling you. You can do. You have to just have in mind the issue that's at hand, right, and focus on that completely and tap to it.
Right. I think it's an amazing technology, and I mentioned before, Honey is an expert. She's certified not only in EFT but TFT, which is actually where the whole technique started. So she trains people in the office how to do this, so you can call us to find out more about that. And there is also free guidance online if you want to try that first. If you just look up Emotional Freedom Technique, and you can get a lot of good information there. And if it works for you, great. And if you feel like it's not working well enough, or you want more help, or you just want to learn it more in person than online, just give us a call at the office, 249-9800. So that is a tremendous advantage that people have, which has only been out. I mean, it's been a few years, but it's not been around that long, certainly not when I started in practice, that you can use. The other thing I want to talk about in terms of weight loss is something which is a fad. And remember, because it's a fad doesn't mean it's not good. It just means that it's new and people are excited about it. And that's intermittent fasting. So I have found intermittent fasting for some people, including myself, I'll raise my hand on this, to be absolutely amazing and helpful. And the benefits of it go far beyond weight loss. I mean, if I'm going to tell you something which I think is true. I don't have the whole study in front of me, but the general idea is definitely true. There was a TV documentary done, I think it was Super Size Me. Is that the one it was? Where they talked about a guy who ate at a fast food store as much as he wanted for a month, something like, probably some of you know more about it than I do, but he was eating massive amounts of fast foods, and he not only gained tremendous amount of weight, but his blood work was horrendous by the end of the month. And that was the point that it interested me. I knew he'd gained weight, but his blood indicators were crazy after 1 month. So somebody else decided to do the same thing, kind of, but he would eat the same junk that this person was eating, but he would do it in only 1 meal a day and fast the rest of the day. And I don't know about his weight gain, but his blood numbers did not change whatsoever. So just the fasting that he did each day regulated himself from all the junk he was eating. Now, let's think. Imagine if you do this kind of fasting and you eat well, what the benefits can be. And I can tell you, I have seen it over and over again. So let's talk about what this means. So intermittent fasting means that there's a period of time each day where you don't eat anything. Okay, don't get too panicky. Relax. You drink water and only water in that period of time. So, and by the way, I want to, getting back on the water from before, seltzer is not water. Because if seltzer was water, they would call it water. They give it a different name because it's different. Seltzer is the opposite of alkalinity in water. And it is not good for you. And it is certainly not good for you if you're using that as your water source. Please stop doing that. At my house, when my kids were little, that was their special treat. Once a week, they got to drink seltzer because they loved it, at least one or two of them. So that was their day they could have seltzer. But the rest of the other days of the week, absolutely not. So I recommend that you, and I can talk more about that if you want at a different time, but for the point, I don't want to distract myself further. The point being that when you're doing intermittent fasting, drinking water, alkaline water would be the best. Alkaline, of course, because of the good minerals in that period of time. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to start you off with baby steps, but you can pick it up further on the line if you're able to. So the first thing would be a 12-hour fast. So a 12-hour fast is not too bad because you can do most of it while you're sleeping. I know some of you get up in the middle of the night for a piece of cake and some chocolate and whatever, but for most of you, I assume you're not doing that. So a 12-hour fast would mean you go to sleep. Well, you don't go to sleep at 9, although that would be good. Let's say from 9 o'clock the night before until 9 o'clock the next morning, water only. Or 8 to 8, or whatever it is you want to do, 7 to 7. You're picking a 12-hour period of time where you only drink water. Okay, and then when I tell my patients, I don't even tell them what to eat the rest of the day. I just tell them start off with that. Obviously, I give them food lists, which I have available. If you want to call us, we can talk about it. I have food lists of a good way to do it. But I'm talking about for you very tough people, you start off with 12 hours. After you do that for a certain amount of time, depending on you, what do you think we do next? 13 hours. And then we start adding time. And the longer you go, the easier it gets and the easier it is to add time. So I have a lot of people, we just start off with 16 hours. And if you feel like you could do it, you could skip the 12 to 16, just start off with 16. And the general way I tell people is from 8 o'clock the night before, and you're going to be amazed if you stop eating at 8, how much different you're going to feel in the morning when you get up. But from 8 o'clock the night before until noon the next day, water only, 8 o'clock the night before till noon. And then so that means you're going to eat from 12 to 8. So if you can only eat 2 meals in that time, that would be the next step. And then what you eat is the next step. But that's what's called intermittent fasting, where intermittently you're fasting on a daily basis. Now, let's say you're doing this, and I know how some of this works for you. Listen, I know some of you, you've been on these great diets, and then one day you can't take it, so you eat something you're not supposed to eat, and then the diet's over. Okay, 3 weeks later, I don't know what happened. I got off track. I know. Okay, so let's say one night you're out at a party, and you've been fasting from 8 at night until 12 the next day. You go to a party, and you're eating late, and it's 10 o'clock, and you ate 2 hours past. What do? Forget the whole thing. That doesn't work. No, you don't do that. 16 hours. You go from 10 o'clock when you ate too late. You count 16 hours. So what you'll be doing is you'll be eating 2 o'clock the next day. And then the next day you get back into it. So no excuses. If you go off, you can shift how the hours go. So intermittent fasting is a great way to start. And it's a great way to, besides all the health benefits, which we'll go into in future weeks, it's a great way to control yourself. And I'm going to tell you, absolutely gets easier and easier as you do it. I had a guy come in, a great guy. He's been doing it. He's actually gone beyond and past it. He goes, when do I need to stop this? I feel so good. I said, who said you need to stop it? He now eats basically 1 meal a day. He's never felt better. I'm not saying you need to run to this, but I'm just giving you an example. And he looks great. His skin looks great, and he's lost weight, and he has so much energy. And he says when he eats that meal, he kind of has to force himself. He's not even hungry anymore. But he worked on that, and he worked on that over a period of 2 or 3 months. But this is your body, and you can do this. Oh, no, not me, not me. Yes, you can do it also. Intermittent fasting. Get in touch with us if you want more information. Dr. Harry Schick. The show is Natural Health Consultants at WCTC. High Point Health Center. We'll come back for our final segment in a few moments on my favorite topic, stress reduction.
You know, this doctor's office has nice fish in that aquarium.
Yes, they're very nice.
Are you nervous? We're just getting a diabetes screening. It doesn't mean we have it or anything.
I do eat a lot of candy, though.
But you exercise. That helps a lot.
I know, so maybe I don't need to be tested.
Judy, we're here. And if you're at risk, it's covered by Medicare. When it's done, we'll know for sure.
Why did I let you talk me into this?
'Cause you're my little sister.
Yeah.
Staying healthy means more good times with the people you love. So why not take control of your health and talk to your doctor about getting a diabetes screening? There's plenty you can do to manage or even prevent diabetes. Catching it early can make all the difference. Many preventive screening tests are covered by Medicare. Talk to your doctor about which ones are right for you. For more information, visit Medicare.gov or call 1-800-MEDICARE.
Mrs. Pierce, you're next.
I'm Mrs. Pierce.
Age before beauty.
Very funny.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Join me, Gary Sullivan, on At Home with Gary Sullivan this weekend. We'll answer your questions about painting, insulation, ventilation, mold, or how to refinish the laminate countertop. I'll help you protect your biggest investment, your home. I'll take your calls about your house and interview home improvement experts every weekend. So join us and learn how to do it, what to use, and where to get the products you need to be successful. Looking forward to your calls.
Sunday morning at 10 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
All right, we got another few minutes left for the time of our life. Stop imagining massive problems. Let's enjoy. Keep things simple. I had Facebook hellos from two of my favorite stores in Highland Park at Salad Auto Sales and Cybernight for your computer needs. This is not a paid advertisement, but I appreciate them listening, and I say hi to them, and I highly recommend them for computer and car issues in town. And great, so we're on our last spot now, which has to do with stress reduction. I remember when I was in chiropractic school back in the 1600s, there was a triangle that we used to study from. There was a triangle of health, and one side of the triangle was structural problems, meaning back alignment, nervous system function. That's come a long way since then. Nutrition was the other, and then the other part of the triangle was mental and emotional health. And I always felt that if I could only help people with one of these, of course we do all three in the office, but if for some reason I can only help one person, only help a person in one area 100%, as much as I love being a chiropractor and I love dealing with nutrition, it would probably be the stress and emotional side, because when that side's not doing well, it really undermines everything else. So that's why I like the stress reduction segment.
Yeah, it also drives everything else.
It drives right. What do you mean by that? Drives everything else?
Well, many of our ailments are triggered by the stress. And you mentioned earlier what happens with cortisol and autoimmune. It's very likely that we have some kind of predisposition to have an autoimmune problem that never would have manifested, never would have happened if we also didn't have tremendous stress. Right. And that triggers the genes to kick in and turn on that autoimmune problem. And that's, I'm sure that you could say, underlies many conditions that you see in the office.
Absolutely. And, sometimes, I remember one time I had this poor guy. He's like 24, 25 years old. And I walk into the room, and he's on the floor doing push-ups. And then he sits in the chair when I walk in, and he's shaking like a leaf. And then he gets up and starts pacing the room while I'm trying to talk to him. And I say to him, "You are really struggling with stress." And he goes, "How did you know?" I said, "Well, it's pretty obvious." And he actually had no idea that the stuff he was doing was so out of the normal, because this is the way his poor life has become.
And he's trying so hard to manage it by doing all those activities. When you do exercise, it kind of reduces the cortisol and sort of helps you feel better in the moment, and it has a tail to it too. So he was just desperate to try to get some relief from that high anxiety level. And
he's getting it now, working with us with neurofeedback and other things. I remember when I used to have stress years ago, I was my leg would jump. I would be like tapping my foot like crazy, and I would see my leg going off. Luckily, I don't have any more stress, so that doesn't happen. But that was in my body. Was one of the ways that I would deal with it. So one of the things about dealing with stress is I like to tell people, and I'm not going to mention her by name, but I've been talking to her a lot about this recently, is trying to deal more with the present time, because really, most of the stress there's very little stress that we have in life. Most of the stress that we have is because we're thinking about things that haven't happened yet, or we're worried about things in the past that did happen. But in the current moment, really, we can keep things simple. Stop imagining massive problems and let's enjoy. Because at this exact moment, there's really no problem. I remember driving in about 5 weeks ago, whenever to the first show, I felt my body shaking, right? Because I was so concerned and worried about how am I going to do this. I've never been on the radio for hosting my own show. I had to turn the heat up in the car to try to calm myself down because I was worried. There's nothing wrong with driving. I mean, I knew how to drive here, but I was worried about what was going to happen later on. So my thoughts were all in the future, and that was creating a tremendous physical stress reaction in my body.
Well, that makes sense because it was an unknown, and we humans are wired to be concerned about the unknown because therein lies the danger. When we don't know what's going to happen to our brains, that's dangerous. The brain functions so much better when it knows where it is and what's going to be, because that's what it can manage. So it has to anticipate danger if it's going into the unknown in order to keep us safe. That's an important mechanism.
Right.
But it's just that when we think that there's danger, our brain believes there's danger. It doesn't know any differently. Whatever we feed it is what our brain believes is happening in the moment.
Right. The interesting thing is that the stress reaction that we have is exactly the same as if you look physically at what happens to a person under stress, it's the same thing that happens to them basically as when they're bleeding. So the stress reaction is really designed to repair ourselves when we're bleeding. So I tell people that every time they create or imagine stress or go into a stressful situation in their head that hasn't really happened yet, it's as if their body feels like they're actually bleeding, because the ultimate stress is having ourselves punctured and begin to bleed. That's when that's the acute stress that the body is designed to deal with.
So when talking about that, it's interesting. When I do a brain map to check and see what's happening with someone's brain, and you see a lot of delta, which often is a result of a brain injury, like playing basketball and getting your head hit, or being in a car accident and your head hits the steering wheel.
Right.
So you see a lot of delta, which is a very slow wave activity. And delta happens because the myelin sheath is compromised, what you mentioned earlier, when someone has
multiple sclerosis.
Exactly. It compromised. And so the nerve cell can't fire rapidly enough, so it slows down, and you just see this delta everywhere. Well, guess what? If I'm looking at someone's brain map and they never had a head injury, I might see a tremendous amount of delta. And the reason for that is because they were exposed to a lot of emotional trauma. Adults who were
interesting.
Had,
so emotional trauma shows up in brainwaves the same way as a head trauma.
Exactly the same way. So if you do a history, you say, well, what was your childhood like? And you hear that it wasn't so much fun growing up, and the person was bullied, or the parents were not attuned to them, or there's a multiple array of reasons why we have suffered in our past and have emotional trauma. But in the brain, that looks the same as if someone got knocked in the head.
It's interesting. It's the exact same idea, the physical manifestation of what was going on emotionally.
Right. So the body responds to emotional trauma in a very similar way as it would to physical trauma, and you can see that. And the body looks the same way when we believe that we're in danger, even though we're not in danger. So it's so important for us to be self-aware about what we say to ourselves in the moment. If you had talked to yourself on the way here.
I remember we talked about that last week. Yeah, make the comments that we say. Again, nobody is listening to what you say to yourself. No, and by the way, nobody really cares. You think anybody really cares what you're saying to yourself? It's between you and you. That's it. So if you have this golden opportunity to program good things into your brain, that doesn't take any time, doesn't cost anything, why not do it? You're going to talk to yourself anyway. Why not say good things to yourself? Even if you think it's not true, who cares? It will have a good effect on you mentally and physically.
Right. And I know you mentioned that right this second we're not in stress. We all have stressful lives. We all have not good things happening at any given moment in time. I don't think any one of us has ever been told that you're going to come into this world and be scot-free, everything's going to go smoothly. But the gift that you can give to yourself, even in the midst of living inside of stress, is taking single moments, taking that breath in through your nose, breathing slowly out through your mouth, and saying to yourself, I am safe. So it's like...
I am safe, yeah. I know that when I do
safe.
muscle testing with people, which is a technique where I find out things that are difficult for people to believe of themselves, the idea that they're safe is a very common problem where people, despite what's going on, and sometimes I'll say to them, look, you feel unsafe. Well, right now you're in the room with me. There's nothing happening.
Right.
And they still, it's like that pattern in their brain, just they don't feel safe, even though in the moment there's nothing going on.
Right. But if you do give this gift to yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, if you say in this moment, I am safe right now, no bear is coming after me, no bombs are falling, deep breath in through your nose, slowly breathe it out through your mouth, I am safe right now, no bombs are falling.
And smile, right? We talked about smiling before.
No bears are coming, and then remembering to give that half smile. And you'll go back to the stress, and then you do it again. And if you continue to feed that information back to your brain intermittently throughout the day, you're not changing the stressful aspects of your life, but you are going to be changing your internal physiology. You will lower your cortisol. You will feel better. Having high cortisol is not going to fix anything, so you might as well just not have it and feel better and diminish.
Right. I always tell people, don't worry about taking a break from your stress. If it's real stress, it'll be there when you come back to it.
Right.
You can take a little vacation from it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and if it was really a problem, it'll still be there. Feel free to take it. And I tell people this actually also. Some people have chronic stress. They can't stop thinking about it. They ruminate about it totally. I tell them, here's what you get to do. You pick, and they're thinking about it 24/7. I said, you get to pick 2 times a day when you can think about it. So, 10:30 to 11 in the morning, and then 5:30 to 6 at night. You can think about it and stress about it all day long. But in between, think about something else. It kind of helps to manage a little bit by having that.
That's true. And I'm thinking now also in terms of what neurofeedback has to offer. I have patients who come in highly stressed. Their lives didn't change. They engage in neurofeedback. They teach their brain to respond differently. Nothing else changes. The stress is there, but they're able to become observers of it rather than being taken up by it. And so they go, wow, I noticed that this or that has been happening as usual, but I'm not getting that stomach clenching.
Right.
I'm not becoming anxious about it. I'm not distressed anymore. I'm just noticing. And so doing those short little intervals of breathing can help support that.
Right.
Doing neurofeedback, there's a long list of things that we can do to help support ourselves.
And listen, I mentioned before, understanding how this works will get you nowhere. If you don't do it, it's meaningless. So just pick one thing, pick anything. Please do something. Don't just say, oh, I learned something very interesting today. Who cares? Now, if you do something interesting today, I care about that because it will actually make a difference. And some people say, oh, smiling, that doesn't work. Did you ever try it? No, right? Some people say, I don't believe in chiropractic. Well, chiropractic is not a belief system. You try it, you do something. Natural health is not a belief system. It's something you try and do. Find out for yourself what the benefits are. Well, once again, I had a list of 20 things to talk about, and I got through 4 of them, which is good for me. It means I got lots for next time I look forward to speaking to you about. I want to tell you that future shows, somebody asked me if I could give a heads up at some of the future topics. We're going to talk in the future weeks, we're going to talk about concussions. We're going to talk about histamine and genetics.